Good morning. Is here anyway. Welcome to another video, and this is not a gear video. 5-6 videos ago I said I was going to try and move more to talking about photography rather than gear. This is that video, and the photography I'm going to talk about is weddings. That's my speciality, so it makes sense to talk about that. I'm going to split this over about 3 videos. This is the first. If you hit the like and subscribe, you'll obviously get the other ones popping up in your feed, and I'll be doing that over the next week or so not too long a wait. What is this? So this is 18 tips for wedding photography, and this is aimed at anyone who is planning to photograph a wedding for maybe a friend or a family member or something like that. Maybe you've done a couple of those and you're thinking about doing paid weddings. Maybe you've done a couple of paid weddings and you just like to sort of have some hints and clues about improving to move on with your wedding photography. This is for you. If you're a street photographer, landscape photographer, wildlife photographer, sorry, probably nothing I'm going to say is going to be much help. But if you think weddings or events, family, some of the stuff I talk about will be relevant for other sorts of photography as well, but predominantly weddings. 18 tips. So, as I say, split over 3 videos. Let me just tell you what we're going to cover. We're going to cover, number 1 is keep it simple. Number 2 is be prepared. Number 3 is know your camera. Number 4 is gear. I have to talk about that at some point, of course. And it'll be the gear that I suggest you use, and in fact the gear that I'm now using, which is somewhat different to what I used probably last year, and certainly a lot different to what I used the year before. Video, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a wedding album. We'll talk about parts of the day. We'll then look at actually how to approach and photograph each part of the day. We'll start with prep. We'll go on to the ceremony. We'll do candid shots. We'll do group shots. We'll do couple shots. We'll do speeches. We'll do evening guests arriving. We'll do the cake cutting. We'll do the first dance. And then we'll look at, once you get back home, what do you do then? What do you do with all these photos? We'll look at editing in Lightroom, and I'll spend a fair amount of time talking about Lightroom. We'll go into Lightroom. We'll look at how I edit wedding photos. And finally, we'll talk about bragging, assuming you want to get more weddings. So that's what we're going to cover. So today, and I will do a sort of an index below in the comments. I'll do an index of what time certain things are talked about, just to help you navigate through each of the videos. Right, so video number 1, we'll just take this in order. So weddings. So this, as I say, is aimed at newbies, beginners, never done one before, done one or two, want to improve, and don't really know where to start, because if you look on YouTube, you'll get all sorts of views about different ways of doing weddings. You'll get little snippets about doing this part of the wedding, but nothing else from that person about doing another part of the wedding. You'll get someone talking about gear that conflicts completely with someone else talking about gear. So I'm going to try and cover the whole thing from start to finish, give you a comprehensive, fairly quick, but comprehensive overview of weddings. So let's start with number 1, keep it simple. And this really is number 1. A wedding is a complicated affair. The couple have spent, by the way, sorry, I haven't mentioned, I'm talking about UK weddings. Obviously, I'm here in the UK. Weddings around the world that are Christian based are pretty similar, I believe. Australia, New Zealand, America, even France, Italy, Catholic weddings, they all follow roughly the same sort of itinerary for the day. So even though, as I say, I'm in the UK, I think most of what I say will apply to other parts of the world. And all weddings are complicated. We have very basically prep, ceremony, sort of reception groups and stuff like that, sit down for a meal, cut the cake, not everyone does that, but and then first dance. So that's roughly how it goes everywhere. And different parts of the day require you to be a different photographer. But you don't want to do what I was doing 2 years ago, and to some extent last year as well, which is going to a wedding with 4 cameras, I don't know, 8 lenses, 2 flashes, LED light, reflectors, bounce umbrellas, softboxes. You don't want to do it, I promise you. It's such hard work, and I now don't do that. I'm taking my own advice and I'm keeping it simple. Reason being, this year I've still got, I haven't got quite as many weddings as last year. I think I've got 28 at the moment. I'll probably get another few booked sometime during the year. But the bulk of those, it's really unusual year, bulk of those are in July, August and September. And I think literally half of my weddings are in just those 3 months. So, and there's 2 weeks when I have 3 weddings on consecutive days. So physically it's going to be a challenge, mentally and it's going to be a challenge. So I've decided I really need to keep it simple, because I do not want to be in a situation where I've got all these weddings, and every wedding I go to, I'm thinking, right, where's my gear? Right, I've got this coming up. Oh, my camera bag is over in that room. Oh, I left that up in the prep, and I've got to run through the wedding venue or do stuff like that and get that lens that I've left up there that I now want to use. It's just so complicated. I made it really hard for myself. The reason I did it was because my ambition to make every photo as good as I possibly could, and to use the best possible gear I could for each and every part of the wedding. In honesty, the couple are probably never going to notice. Other photographers might notice. The difference is just not worth the effort I put in back then. Far better to keep it really simple and focus on the photograph and not the gear. That's where I am this year. So keep it simple. Don't be over ambitious with the shots you're trying to get. And basically for every part of the wedding, get the must-have shots, get those first. Once you've got those, then do something that's more for you, something a bit more daring, something a bit more challenging, but get the important shots first. Weddings fly past so quickly. Don't miss the shots you've got to get, and we'll obviously talk about those a bit later. So that's number 1. Number 2, be prepared. The worst weddings that I do are ones where I've never met the bride and groom, I've never been to the venue, we haven't done an engagement shoot, all they've told me is basically the time of the ceremony, and the wedding, the prep, the ceremony, the reception are all in different places. They're all in the middle of a town. Those sort of weddings are an absolute nightmare. Where do I park? What do I do if that car park's full? What if it's raining and I've got to walk half a mile with all this gear, which is now a lot less gear, to get to here and there? And in fact, my wedding coming up next Saturday is exactly that wedding. In fact, I'm doing the Friday evening. They've got a party in the middle of town in their house. The following day, the Saturday, I've got to go to a hotel where they're staying overnight, which is in the same town, but it's in town, a different part of the town. The ceremony is then in the Guildhall, which is in a different part of town. There's no parking anywhere. It gets really complicated. So be prepared, plan, look ahead. Where am I going to park? What if that's full? Can I park? How far away is the nearest car park if I can't get there? That kind of thing. Let me just run through. Know your couple. So 98% of couples I meet in some way or other before the wedding. At the very least, it will be a Zoom. Preferably, going out from that will be a coffee. to meet them both. Going up from that, and my preferred option is to do an engagement shoot, because I get to meet them, they get to see me working, they see the photos, I can take all the details of their day, and I suppose the icing on the cake would be to do an engagement shoot at the venue, because then we can talk about where we do different shots and that kind of thing. We're all on the same page, know everything about what they're planning, even to the point of, is the bride planning a surprise for the groom that she doesn't want the groom to know about? Ask them both separately, have you got anything sort of secret planned? Because couples do that sort of thing, and if they spring it on you on the day, you can miss something really important. I've got on my thing here, have a plan B for every single part of the day. So we talked about parking, but also, what would you do if you're driving there and your car breaks down? You get a puncture. I've had that once. Fortunately, I'm pretty mechanical, and I just pulled off. It was on a dual carriageway. I managed to limp to a lay-by, got in a lay-by, 15-20 minutes to change the wheel, back on the road, and they didn't even realise I was later than I expected to be, and I certainly wasn't late. But what if the car broke down? How would you get there? What would you do? Have you got, what if you're ill? What if you're the day before, or the 2 days before, you trip over and you really badly sprain your ankle and you can barely stand up? What would you do? I'm not telling you what to do, but think about it. Have a plan, because if you're planning to make weddings something you're going to do regularly, this shit is going to happen sometime. So go through every part of the wedding. What can go wrong? We're going to talk about gears, obviously. What do you do when you're about to take the big group photo and you start clicking the shutter and nothing's happening? Something's frozen. You quickly flip open the battery, take the battery out, pop it back in. It's still not working. What are you going to do? I've had that 3 times, I think. Have a plan, because it will happen. Okay, so be prepared. Number 3, and I see posts on Facebook that make me so scared about this. Know your camera and know your gear. There are so many people, and I can't believe it, post on Facebook saying, I've got a wedding next weekend. What's the best lens to use? Seriously, you're going to do a wedding and you don't know what lens to take with you? Or something like, I've just been to the venue. That's good, being prepared. And it looks like the first dance is going to be somewhere really, really dark. They're going to pull the curtains, and how do I do this? It's it's no good turning up at the wedding and trying to sort these problems out when you get there. You need to know your gear absolutely inside out. An example. I when we get onto gear, I'm going to be talking about this guy a lot. This is the Nikon D500, but also the D780 I use a lot. What? You're not using mirrorless? I'm not using my Z6 III or my ZF. I've already got rid of the Z8 last year. No, I'm not. I'm just, as a side issue, I've been using DSLRs and mirrorless for long enough for both of them to be able to have an unbiased view as to which one for me works best at a wedding, and it's a DSLR. I do use mirrorless for some parts of the wedding, but it's the right tool for the job. Most of the time, over 90% will be with this D500. Right, so when I'm walking from the ceremony and the couple are walking out, and they've just been walking out and they're now going outside into bright sunlight, what shots am I going to get of them out there? And as I'm walking there, I'm making changes, just walking along. You can't see, sorry. Just walking along, looking where I'm going, not tripping over and cracking my head open, twisting my ankle or anything stupid, but walking along just without even looking, changing settings on the camera, maybe a quick glance down to the mode button, and changing things so that when I get outside, I'm ready. There's no question. I can just instantly start taking photos. At a wedding, you have to be lots of different people. You have to be a portrait photographer. You have to be an architecture photographer, a family photographer, an event photographer, a band photographer, a product photographer, and every one of these people will have possibly different settings and a different way of using the camera. So you have to know your gear better than you could ever imagine. As a very quick example, and just ask yourself this: you're going from outside the church, and when you go inside the church, very small windows, the lighting is with these ridiculously horrible orange lamps hanging down, 30 or 40 feet from the ceiling. That's your lighting. How are you going to change your white balance from the moment you walk outside, which is daylight, or sunny, whatever you want to call it, whatever setting on your camera you use for outside on sunny weather, you walk in. What are you going to do to your white balance that isn't going to require you to sit there thinking, oh, what should I do? Should I try this? What about that one? And taking 10 test shots to find out. You need to know, you need to have practiced so that you can do that without thinking about it. I cannot overemphasize that enough. To keep it simple is hugely important. Know your gear is certainly number two. If you don't know your gear as well as I've just explained, you will miss shots. You will take shots that you think are going to work, you'll get them home, look at them in Lightroom, and they're crap. It's just you cannot give them to the couple. Don't get in that situation. Number four. Right, we're going to talk about gear, and that's where we're going to leave this video, and then my next video will go through the rest of them, or another batch of them. So gear, as I've already mentioned, for me, I prefer a DSLR. Now, it's obviously once mirrorless came out, what were we now, 4 years ago? I got my first mirrorless camera. There's a novelty factor. Oh look, I've got an EVF. I can actually see the exposure. I can see exactly the composition. I can see the depth of field, and so on and so forth. And for a while, an EVF is a real novelty, and yeah, makes photography so easy, doesn't it? But when you do that for years, for 2 or 3 years, and you realise that, well, actually, it's not that much of a help, because it just doesn't look as real. I'm not as connected with the photograph that I'm trying to get as I am with an optical viewfinder. And if I know how to use a DSLR properly, it's every bit as good. You can trust the exposure metering to get the right exposure if you use the right exposure metering. Batteries last forever on a DSLR. The layout of a DSLR is just perfect. It's actually made for photography. Many mirrorless cameras, they just haven't got the buttons in the right place. They're not labelled. I mean, on this thing, I've got one button that I've programmed, and that's the FM1 button to give me a different AF area. Other than that, I don't need to program it. It's already set up to be a photographer's camera. Plus, with Nikon, I've got, I don't know, way too many F-mount lenses. The F-mount lenses have been made for decades, and there's hundreds of different types out there available at a tenth of the cost of a new Z-mount lens. You've got so much more choice. And to be honest, photographing weddings, whilst it's challenging and you need to do lots of different types of photography, it's not that demanding of gear. You don't need to be able to shoot at 20 frames a second. 6 is perfectly adequate. When we come on to talking about the first dance, you don't need to be able to focus in -8 EVs, dark moonlight. You don't need to be able to do that. You don't, honestly, you don't need face detection and IAF. I very, very rarely use it on the mirrorless cameras. and even if you do use it, it's not perfect. But it's taken me 4 years of using a mirrorless camera to get to that point, to be able to objectively say, is this better or is this better? And as I say, I've now decided DSLR is better. Right, so what do you need? You need a main camera. So I've said D500. You do need a backup camera, and in my case, that's the D780. Now the D500 is crop sensor, the D780 is full frame. Why would I use a crop sensor camera for a wedding? Surely I've got to use the best gear. I've got to use at least a 40 megapixel camera. Crap. When I started weddings, I used a D700, which is 12 megapixels. And when I look back, and this is partly why I've gone back to a DSLR, when I look back at those photos from my first weddings, okay, the way I framed things, the composition wasn't, hopefully anyway, wasn't as good as what I do now. But the actual quality image was perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with a 12 megapixel photo. With pretty limited AF, what is it, 50? I think the D700 has got 51 AF points, but it hasn't got face detection or IAF or any of this clever stuff. I still got some really, really good photos. So lens wise, this isn't actually the lens I use. This is a 24-85 full frame lens. The lens I use on this is actually over in the car. It's a DX zoom lens, 16 to 80, f2.8 to f4, with image stabilization built in. Brilliant lens, and it means we can keep things simple, because I simply have this, not that lens, the lens I'm talking about, on this camera, and I can shoot from 24 full frame equivalent to 120, 2.8 to f4. There are very, very few shots during the day where that lens will not get me a brilliant photograph, and it means I just need this. I don't need to carry around 2 cameras and a lens bag with 3 lenses in and a flash dangling off my shoulder. I don't need that stuff. I just walk around with 1 camera, and that makes life so much easier. Not having to think about, I've got to grab my camera bag and run with it from here to the next place. Bugger, I've left the lens bag upstairs with prep. That is all now history. So keep it simple by using 1 camera, 1 zoom lens. It's got to be a good quality. You don't, I say that, I say that, but actually, even thinking back to some of the kit zoom lenses that I've seen photos of, I haven't got one, but I've seen kit lenses. They're not actually that bad. A lot of them are pretty damn good, actually. So, but then one other lens, and that's an 85 millimeter full frame equivalent prime lens, 1.8 or 1.4, because there's probably going to be a few shots during shooting a couple when you do want something that's going to give you a lovely, lovely blurred background and that kind of thing. So one other lens is all you really need. A flash, oops, and this is what I use, Godox V1, with this great big box on the front. I say it's a great big box, it's just plastic, it's very light, and it just gives you, it just softens the light. If I'm using this on camera, which I don't do very often, it's almost always off camera, but even then it might only be like there, you know, slightly off camera, only a couple of feet away from me, so I still want something to modify the flash to make it a bit softer. So that's the flash. Obviously spare batteries, SD cards, a stool. When you come to do the group shots, I use, it's over in the car, a little pop-up stool. It's only about 18 inches high, but it just enables you to stand on top of that. I actually then hold the camera up here to do the group shots, so I can get a shot. And even if it's on level ground, I'm going to get everyone's face in the shot. If you're just standing, even if you're just standing there and holding it up on the ground, you probably won't be quite high enough. So I always take a stool with me. And finally, a piece of kit for the first dance, and any other things, maybe sparklers, any other things like that, is Rotalight Neo 2. I use this, as we'll explain, during the first dance, and it's made life a heck of a lot easier for anything that's in darkness. I'm not talking about a church. I wouldn't use it in the church. I wouldn't use any artificial light, even in a really dark church. But that comes in a few parts of the day. Maybe even for the couple portrait shots as well, rather than a flash. But we'll talk about that later. So that's where we are. Next video will be up in a couple of days. As I say, if you're interested, subscribe and you'll get to see the next videos as well. I hope this is all going to be of use to you. Thank you very much for watching.